Welcome to Bigfoot Society. If you have Bigfoot activity to report from the same areas discussed in this episode, please reach out to me directly after this episode. And if you'd like to be on the podcast to discuss a personal Bigfoot encounter, please reach out to me directly at bigfootsociety@gmail.com. Do you wish there was more Bigfoot Society to listen to every week? Well, there is now. If you become a supporting member over at Patreon, you get a special members-only episode every single week on Wednesdays, and sometimes even more episodes. Head on over to patreon.com/the Bigfoot Society. And now let's get on with the show. All right, Bigfoot Society, you've got the privilege of talking to Curtis Jones today. Curtis is an individual that has an interesting encounter he'll be sharing from Northern California. Welcome to the show, Curtis. How's it going today?
Hey, I'm doing good. How are you doing?
Doing great. It's starting to get warm out here in Iowa, so I can't complain. That's a great day.
Okay. Yeah.
But, Curtis, I'm glad to have you on the show today. I'm going to go ahead and want to make sure you have the time to share what you came on the show to talk about. So you're welcome to take us back to the time when you experienced something weird out there that day in Northern California.
I got an identical twin brother that also was there with me when we had this encounter. And this encounter actually took place. It was probably about a 10-minute ordeal altogether. And what makes it unique is that it was actually down in a small town in Northern California. It was in Yreka, California, to be exact. And the population was maybe 3,500 people at the time. And this was in 1983. Me and my brother and my siblings, we pretty much grew up between California and Oregon. We spent our childhood up until we were 15 years old in 1983 when we came back into California, which is just right on the I-5. Yreka is just about 20 miles from the Oregon border. And we moved around a lot. So we lived all over Oregon. We lived in most of the places here in California as well. We moved way too much. But anyways, we came back into California. It was in the summer of 1983. And after doing the research, I found that it was going on. It was about a 5-year drought going on at the time. And this was in July. This was the middle of July, and it was the day that this happened, or the night, or whatever. But during the day, it was a blistering like over 100 degrees in Northern California there. And so it was so hot that we decided we just stayed indoors until it got in the evening time when the sun came down. Because me and my brother and my sister our skin are pretty light and everything. So we decided we didn't want to stay outside in the 110 degrees, So so basically, we also had a couple of neighborhood kids, or they're about the same age as me and my brother. We were 15, and the other two brothers, they were also twins, but they were fraternal twins, and we met them a couple days prior, and so they came over to our place. We were staying with at my aunt's house or apartment complex, which is right next door to the school ground, which is just not too far from the actual where the west of the mountains start, from the Klamath National Forest. And so we're on the west side of town basically, and probably about a quarter miles from when the mountain starts, the forested area starts going up into the hills and everything. There's a few houses up there past that also, but we were right there at the school ground. Actually, we decided we're going to play war is what we're going to do. So there's which is basically a hide and go seek. And what makes my encounter so unique is that there was three of us on each of us on a team for the when we were playing war. And then it just so happens that there was 3 Sasquatches as well that came into the picture. So that's where the confusion comes in, because especially in my part of the story, because I was the one that actually came the closest to the ordeal that happened. So I can tell you what happened is that it was my brother's team were set to, they're like they were playing hide and go seek. So it was my brother's team, which had the other two brothers with him, and I had my sister and her boyfriend with me, and that was just the way it worked out. So it was my brother's team that were the ones that were coming after us, basically. So me and my team had to we had like 100 seconds. They had to count down. My brother had to count down 100 seconds or whatever it was, a countdown of 100. While my team decided to take go take off. So we were pretty much on the opposite side of the field, of the school ground field. We were way over on the just opposite of the opposite corners from where my brother. My brother was at the southeast corner of the schoolyard, and I was located at the northwest corner. And so my brother already knew where I was at, because for some reason they decided not to do their countdown, and then they decided to cheat. And they seen us going around the fence line, and they seen where we were at. But I didn't know where my brother was at. See, so he knew where we were at, but I didn't know where he was at. So we're on the other side of the field there, on the northwest side, and there's a baseball diamond that me and my team were laying down at, and then right there on that whole west perimeter of the schoolyard was an 8-foot fence, a chain link fence. And that went all the way down, all the way basically from north where we're at, all the way down to the south end of the field. And then on the other side of that on that south side is where the apartment complex was, but there was no fence line there. So basically my brother was right there, him and his team were laying there, and it was already getting dark out already. The sun had already gone over the mountains. And the sky was pretty light. There was a lot of stars, like millions of stars. So it was still pretty light kind of thing. It wasn't light enough where you could just see details a lot, but you could definitely see because it was kind of a brightness in where you could actually see, shadows or whatever, or a silhouette. Anyways, so as my team was sitting behind, or laying down behind the baseball diamond. And so my brother was way over on the other side, and so basically the three Sasquatches that came into the picture were right there, right pretty close where my brother was at, right at the corner came in from the street, or close from the street, right there, right by where my brother was at. They were walking across the field. Now it was still dark enough to where even my brother couldn't see complete detail. But he knew exactly what him and his team, they seen these three figures walking across the field in front of them. They were about 50 feet away from where my brother and his team were laying down looking at them. And of course, I'm getting this from my brother after the fact, because I was on the opposite side, and I could see the same figures, but they were way off the distance compared to where my brother was at. So what I'm saying about this is that the three that were walking, I was totally convinced it was my brother's team. They were walking about 10 or 15 feet apart from each other, each one of those, and I could see the silhouettes walking across the field, going towards the chain link fence, basically where I was at. I was laying right there, right next to the chain link fence, and so I could see them. And then, so my brother and them, when they seen them, they were walking towards the chain link fence, and they observed. Well, first of all, they looked at each other, and they're whispering to each other. They're saying that's a Bigfoot. They're saying that to each other. They knew exactly what they were looking at, because the way my brother was telling me is that they weren't, they didn't have any clothes on or anything, and they're all hairy, and. One was bigger, of course. One was, they couldn't tell exactly how big it was, but it was definitely bigger than any normal human would be. And So they just stayed. They didn't say anything. They just sat there and they observed it. And then they witnessed all three of the Sasquatches go to the fence. Now there's two of them. The two of the smaller of the three, they decided to walk around the other to the other side of the fence, and beyond that fence is just nothing but what do you call that? Just land. It's undeveloped property. Just a big open field with a lot of brush and real tall weeds and grass. 3 feet tall, and a lot of dirt mounds and stuff like that. You see a few trees here and there, but other than that, it's just all just like rolling hills and grass. But anyway, so the two that veered off to go around the other side of the fence for whatever reason, I don't know, but the bigger one, he got to the fence, and he I'm going to assume it was a he, but we don't know that for sure. But the Sasquatch just all he did is put his hands on the top of the fence, and just totally just lifted himself up and just jumped right over the fence. You know what I'm saying? And now me, on the other hand, I was waiting for I didn't want to try to go and start. Well, I guess you'd say we were going to play guns. Basically, it's kind of like how I was looking at it. My brother says it was a hide and go seek. But anyways, we were playing war. But I wanted to get on the other side of the fence. And there was a man gate right there too, where I was at. So me and my team got on the other side of that fence. And even when I was at, I knew exactly where those figures were at, because I could see them down the line. So I thought it was my brother's team. So, but I couldn't tell what that, because I was going on the other side with my team on the past the fence line, but I did not feel the fence move whatsoever. I didn't feel any kind of, like as if you were crawling up a chain link fence, and you can feel a vibration or anything. So there was no vibration at that time at all. So I couldn't tell exactly what was going on. So me and my other team, we get on the other side, my sister and her boyfriend. We just started crawling down the fence line, basically towards where we were assuming that we were going to run into my brother's team. And we get down about, this is taking a few minutes. So, and we just want to take our time because we were looking to make sure that we weren't getting spotted by my brother's team. So we get about 50 yards down. And then I'm thinking, okay, well, now this is where we're going to stay. So we decided to stay there. We're right next to the fence line. There's a little bit of embankment right there, too. The whole fence is just there's like an embankment that goes down to the open field, at least a few feet up. Anyway, so we get down there. We're about 50 yards down from where we got, came into the gate. And so that's where we're going to stay. So I just had my back against the fence, and I'm just looking around. I'm just looking and just getting my eyes acclimated to the darkness a little bit. I mean, I can still see pretty good, but and off the distance when you're looking to the west, it's there's not too much stuff going on. There's some houses, but beyond the houses is where you start heading up into the mountains. So anyway, so we're sitting there for about a minute or so, and then but now my sister and her boyfriend they were getting bored, and they didn't really care for the game that much anyways, and they're kind of making a little bit of noise, and I kept wanting them to be quiet a little bit, because I didn't want my brother's team to catch us, right? So they decided, okay, well, we're just going to go ahead and crawl out into the grass, basically, and which is what they did. And I was glad to see them go, because I didn't want to have them give my position away. So they just took off into the grass, but I wasn't paying attention exactly where my sister and her boyfriend were actually headed, exactly which direction. But I could definitely hear them going, rustling in the grass and just moving around for a little bit. But at the same time, I wasn't paying that much attention to where they're at. So all I'm doing is scanning my head from left to right, just kind of slowly, just to see if I see anything. And like I said, this is going on for about at least a minute and a half, maybe 2 minutes at the most, especially after my sister and her boyfriend got in the out in the grass, and they were still making a little bit of, they were making a little bit of noise, I guess. And then basically from right where I was sitting, I happened to notice there's two figures squatting on a mound, on one of the mounds. But at this point, I'm thinking that it's my sister and her boyfriend, because they were that close. So because I could hear my sister and them giggling and stuff in the grass. But the two figures I see, they're probably about 20 feet away from me, and so and I can hear my sister and her boyfriend giggling and stuff. So, and I kept looking over and telling them, I kept telling them to be quiet. I kept I was looking at those two figures, but they were sitting down, squatted on that hill, and so I wasn't really paying attention too much. The only thing I found odd was that these two figures were just looking straight at me, at least facing towards me, and they didn't move a muscle, not one bit. And I was totally quiet anyway, so that they definitely knew I was there. That's for sure. So basically, I'm just I'm scanning my head back and forth and stuff, and meanwhile, my sister and her boyfriend still, they're not making a huge noise, but I can still hear them enough to where I just wish that they weren't being, that noisy for for the other team to catch us, And so this is going on for about maybe, I'd say no more than 3 minutes altogether. Because now, as I'm trying to just look up and down the field, I'm looking over to my left, towards the north. And as I'm coming back to the looking towards the south, basically heading back towards the south, now I see a third figure. Now this third figure came running around backside of the other two that were already sitting there. Now this is the part that got me. This is where I ended up going into shock after this. But that third one came running so fast, and that third one was at least he was probably 30 feet from me, at least, because he was just right behind the other two, which I thought was my sister and her boyfriend at the time. But it came running around the other two, and it came running right dead at me. I mean, this thing was running at top speed. So at this point, even when I first seen it, I'm saying, it's the other team. So I'm yelling out that it's the other team at that particular time. But even before I can get on my feet, that third one ran so fast, and is not, we're talking leaping at me, but at this time, first of all, I never believed in Bigfoot anyways. Bigfoot wasn't even on my radar. So that was not even a question at that particular point in time. So that third Bigfoot, it got up to literally got 10 feet from me. By the time I got on my feet, and I was still right next to the fence. That thing stopped because I started yelling, and then I started going bang. I started yelling bang, 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 like I'm shooting a gun. Even though I didn't have a weapon or anything in my hand at all. I'm just something I was doing, and I just started going bang, 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 yelling, and I was doing this at the top of my lungs. And I wasn't even afraid at this time because, like I said, I thought it was my brother's team. At this time, it was my brother's team that was coming to get me. Now, once that third one stopped, it just stopped and looked straight at me, and it was probably it probably took him at least 2 or 3 seconds to finally just decide, or just all it did is just turn away from me, and the other two was already standing too. The other two got scared because I started yelling, because of my loud yelling. So now all 3 of them, they just turned around and started leaping away from me. And they were leaping, we're talking about high strides. I just couldn't believe it. Now, this is where I was in a shock. So as they were running away from me, leaping away from me, all I can do is think, okay, for some reason, I did not have even a feeling that they were even human, especially from what I saw. When that third one there, I knew it was not human because I could see the individual hairs. We're talking from head to toe was just nothing but just total hairy. Even though I couldn't see I couldn't see the facial features of this creature. But I definitely know it was on 2 feet, and I know it was way bigger than me, and bigger than anybody on my brother's team. And I seen how wide it was too. There's no way. There's no way that this was human. Anyways, so they're leaping away from me, and the only thing I could do is because my eyes was telling me one thing, right? It's telling me it's not human, whatever. But my mind is thinking of I just started yelling deer. That was my next words. I just kept yelling deer. And at this point, I didn't feel like I was in shock, but apparently I was, because I was totally confused. I didn't know what was going on. These creatures were just leaping away from me, and I could tell because they were leaping as if they were like running like deer almost, even though I know they're on 2 feet. So that's basically what's going on right there. And I still didn't even realize exactly where my sister and her boyfriend were at this time, because I was still in shock. And then all I can remember is I could see at one point, I can still see these Sasquatches way down the road, or not road, down the into the field. They're heading towards the mountains, but they kept looking at me. They kept looking back at me. If you ever seen the Gimlin tapes, of course, you probably know all that stuff too. But the way that the Sasquatches were looking back at me just reminded me so much of the way that their bodies were moving, to look back at me without. They couldn't turn their necks completely around. They had to turn their whole upper torsos basically towards me at the same time as they're leaping through the field. So. And I never even seen that Gimlin tape until just within the last 5 to 10 years myself, because I never was that interested in really trying to pursue anything. But anyways, my sister and her boyfriend finally were standing next to me, even though I didn't realize they came up to me. But at this time, I can hear my brother yelling from the field behind, coming from the baseball field, coming from the apartments, and I couldn't hear what he was saying at the time. So I finally got, because I was down the embankment at the time. So when I see my brother come running, they're running at top speed coming toward me, because they can hear me yelling at the top of my lungs, anyways. So they got to the fence. They were probably within about 10 feet from the fence. I finally heard my brother, because he kept yelling out that they saw a Bigfoot, right? But I didn't understand what he was saying until he came within basically about 10 feet away, when I was finally I had my hands on the fence in between the links, and all it took was my brother just one time. He just said, "Hey, we just saw Bigfoot." And at this point in time, this is when I went into a deep, deep shock. So shocking, mainly of fear. This is when the fear hit me. It just hit me like a ton of bricks. I mean, it hit me so hard that I didn't even know where I was at. Somehow I ended up getting up on the top of that fence within. My brother, the way he tells me, is that he couldn't believe how fast I got on top of that fence. I just grabbed a hold of the link, and I just used my arms and just got maybe a couple of different strides up, and I grabbed the top of that fence, and I was over the other side not even crawling the other side. I just jumped over the other side, landed on my feet, and I was running into the middle of the baseball field. And that's finally, I was probably about halfway down in the field when I realized I could definitely visualize. To this day, I can remember myself knowing where I was at, or at least I could see where I was at. And all I could do is I finally just hit the ground, and I went to the ground, and I was just rubbing my eyes and stuff, and I had tears and everything in my eyes, and I was shaking. I was shaking as if it was 30 degrees out or something. I mean, I was shaking so bad, it was visibly shaking, and I felt pretty sick, actually, even though I didn't throw up or anything. But somehow I was in the middle of the field, and it took a while for me to finally start being able to communicate with the rest of everybody else that was around, my brother's team and my sister and her boyfriend. It probably took me at least an hour before I could finally just collect my own thoughts, and without shaking. I was still shaking, I was still scared, but the other people, my brother and the teams, everything were there together. But so finally, we all just sat down in the middle of the field, and I was always still looking back at the fence. I was that scared. I'm going, oh man, if they come back at us, I was still scared, but not to where I was in total shock anymore. But so we decided to compare our stories after a while. We were there for a good couple hours, just sitting there, and it took a while for me to be able to just be able to breathe normal, for one thing. So we just sat around and we just all compared to each other's story. I let them tell theirs first, because as they're telling their story, I was still scared. I was just still kind of just listening to them, listening to what they saw and everything. And finally, when I was finally able to speak and feel clear enough to tell my story, which was it was a scary situation. I was traumatized at that particular time, and I was traumatized for days after that. So when we finally, at the end of the night, even after all that was going on, after we decided to compare our stories and stuff, the two brothers that we had met that were with us, that was the last night that we actually even communicated with them, because we finally we already came up to the conclusion that something like this is just, you can't just go and start blurting out and everything, because me and my brother were very shy anyways. We didn't like any kind of a controversy or nothing like that, and we just came to that town just a matter of days before, and so we didn't want to start any waves with anybody, and we get embarrassed. We got embarrassed pretty easy. We didn't like being a center of attention, and that's the way we've always been. Me and my brother, even to this day, we hadn't even talked about the Bigfoot thing. We might have done it a couple different times, but like I said, once those other two brothers left to go home, we moved them in town and stuff, because we did spend a year in school right there. It was our first year of high school, and we knew the brothers. We seen them every time, but we didn't even talk to them. And so we never even got together to even think about trying to talk to each other about the incident, But at the same time, we spent that whole year with them, going to school and everything. And then even my brother and I, we didn't. We talked to each other for quite a few days after the whole incident, but after that, we just pretty much we had our own adventures growing up and everything. It was just different things going on, and that's pretty much it, even to this day. And then speaking of all that, I actually wrote a book, and it's called Not Just Another Bigfoot Encounter, and that just came out on the beginning of January, just about a couple months ago here. And that was just a detail, let's just tell my story from the days, or from the not the days, but from the morning of the event that happened. Just what we did and how we met up with the brothers and all that stuff. And then it also goes into after what we did afterwards. Like the next day, we went to the library to do get some research and try to find out about what we could about the Bigfoot, because like I said, I didn't even pay any attention about Bigfoot up to that point. I did see the Bigfoot movies in the 70s when I was growing up, because I was born in '68. So I did watch the film, and I can't remember exactly even the name of the film, but I remember it scaring me, whatever it was that we watched. And so basically all this time, but I never paid any attention to. I didn't even think anything about Bigfoot. I didn't think he was for real, for one thing. So it wasn't one of those things I was looking for. And then in 1983, of course, there was we didn't have cell phones, and the only cameras that you could even get were the 35 millimeter cameras, and then you can only, you have to take a picture, but once you take that picture, it's gone. But that's just something that we didn't have the money to buy cameras, nothing like that. We came from a poor family ourselves, so we didn't have that luxury to be able to go buy a camera. But we're also not going to have a camera at nighttime while we're playing war either. So anyways, so that's basically my story until, like I said, until I finally wrote my book here. It came just a matter of about 4 or 5 months ago when I decided I was going to write my book. So and there you go. That's my story.
What a fascinating account. Thank you for sharing. And I think it's very important what you just shared about the technology that you had available to yourself during that time. There's going to be a lot of listeners. I have a lot of younger listeners. And another way to put it, guys, is if you've seen the Stranger Things show on Netflix, it's pretty much the same time in history. So that's what Curtis had available to him and his friends, is anything they had in the Stranger Things show. They're riding around on bikes and getting into all sorts of crazy adventures and stuff. But man, wow, what a fascinating account. How did that affect you the rest of your life growing up, going through that?
Well, the good thing is I had pretty good, not supported my family, because when I told my story to especially my aunt, because we were staying with my aunt at the time, and my mom and dad, they were actually traveling around California looking for work and stuff. So we were actually staying with my aunt. So basically that same night, I told my aunt about the situation, and she, of course, she pretty much laughed about it, and she had her boyfriend there too, and they were laughing. So, and like I said, we get embarrassed pretty quick. We were very shy. We were very shy kids, because we moved around so much. We didn't make friends that much, like we'd move to a town and we'd just have to we'd just move anyways. But how it affected me, I was able to, I still had good friends growing up, and when we do finally have friends, we did a lot of hiking and stuff, and it was all during the daylight, of course, so I wasn't afraid of going up in the mountains. And I actually did a lot of hiking throughout the year that I was there, and it was actually about 4 or 5 years on and off that I lived in Wairika, but throughout that time that we did go leave and come back, we had friends, and we hiked up in those same hills right there in the Klamath National Forest. And I also want to point out that this town is only about, as the crow flies, is only about 90 miles from the Patterson Tape location, as I was trying to say. Like I said, as the crow flies, it's in the same mountain range. So, and it goes in that mountain range, the Klamath National Forest goes all the way up into, and it becomes another forest where it goes into Oregon. But it's just as thick and rough terrain as anything that anybody would ever encounter, basically. So, and with all the stories, I know, of course, Washington has the most amount of sightings, because that's that's even more forested per square inch than even California is. So that's basically where I'm at. And like I say, I've gone hiking. I've hiked up. I live not very far from Yosemite right now. I just live right down the hill from Yosemite. And so I've done a lot of hiking up there. I've hiked the Angeles National Parks. I've also had about 5 different bear encounters throughout my years after that. I've had 5 different bear encounters. 2 were kind of more encounters than it was just sightings, but those are 2 different stories in itself. And anyways, so I've done a lot of camping. I've done especially camping. I do the roughneck type of camping. I love going up in the mountains, not going to Boy Scout camps or going to any kind of campground, which I've done also. I've taken my boys up camping all the time, but I also like hiking, like backpacking. which I've taken my boys backpacking with me, and we camped out for a couple nights, you know, up in the high Sierras, and then the other forest down below there. I can't remember, the Sequoia National Forest. That's where it was. So, like I said, I was definitely an avid hiker. I love hiking. That's my favorite place. I love hiking. I love the woods. I love the mountains. I've also lived up in the redwoods in the Northern California. So my mom and dad, they moved around, and as an adult, they happened to go move over there in Klamath, a town called Klamath, which is right there on the California coast, right by Eureka. And so I've done a lot of hiking up there. I've gone camping up there. So, you know, and I know I've ran into all kinds of different wildlife. Of course, I've seen elk, so much deer and elk, and just especially up in the redwoods is like, it's just an everyday occurrence. It's not that big. It's not that shocking at all. You just see it. You know, it's no big deal. You know, I've seen big raccoons. I couldn't believe how big the raccoons get. Oh man, they're bigger than most dogs. So, other than that, yeah, that's basically my story.
You know, it's not surprising that this happened to you in this county, Siskiyou County in California. It's one of the highest reports in a county in California, if you're going by the BFRO website. I mean, and if you look at the list of the encounters in that county, it is absolutely wild. I mean, there's Eureka sightings all over the place. And then you've also, in this same county, you've got places like Happy Camp. People might be aware of that area. You've got Mount Shasta. Dunsmore has come up on, well, I don't know if it's out yet. I think it's out. Yeah, Dunsmore has come up once. Some interesting things there. You've also got, you know, the Marble Mountains Wilderness. And that's pretty famous in the community as well because of that video. There's just so much. And I wanted to point out, here's a really interesting thing. The reports in this county go and this is just the stuff that is public, right? Of course, how it goes. But in August 1944, there was a Class A, which means face to face. They had a visual. And its sister and brother sees 3 creatures near Eureka. Or Yreka, sorry. That's kind of interesting, isn't it?
Yeah. It's because I haven't even delved into that, researching what type of sightings have been done up there in Siskiyou County or anything. So I didn't realize that there was that many other encounters. You know, I just thought that mine was kind of more unique in comparison. You know, so I wasn't fully aware of all the different things going on up there.
Oh, Curtis, it'll absolutely blow your mind once you start going through the list of 31 public encounters, and that's just on this one website. This county is well known for people having sightings. When you were living around that area, did you hear of any other times when people were having encounters with Bigfoot in that area?
That's one thing I hadn't. See, we were so busy just wanting to play around and stuff, and even the subject never even came up. So I never really even got to that point to even try to ask around. But like I said, we were pretty shy anyways, and especially when you're talking about Bigfoot. I would have been. That's just something that's just totally embarrassing to even bring up. Even right now, even when I tell people I wrote a book and stuff, I got people around me now and got, that I tell. But like when I see them in a restaurant or a store or something like that, I don't like to say that I don't want to mention the word Bigfoot just around other people, because I don't want people looking at me like I'm crazy. It still embarrasses me when I even bring that subject up. I have kind of a limited education as it goes anyways, because and as far as my comprehension type of skills, my writing skills, not that great. So basically, I'm on I think it was through Facebook, and I just scrolling down, looking at different people's stories and stuff, and I came across this advertisement for what do you call that? A publishing platform to publish a book, right? Because I just didn't even I don't have the means or even the know-how to try to write a book. And then of course after doing my research, I'm thinking, okay, well, you have to go to a publishing agent, which I found out costs way more money compared to what I had to pay. Just to even get your book for them to think about publishing, you gotta hand over like $5,000 to a publishing agent, and then you end up you only get like between 3 and 13% of the royalties. So then now go back to the platform that I found. Their advertisements that you get 70% of the royalties, and then they got an AI. The AI tool is what helps you or help me edit my story. All I did is I submitted my transcript. It took me about a month or so just to be able to. I already had notes. I already had all my notes that I've had over the years. I just kind of looked back through it, and I remember everybody's name that was involved. Like the two brothers, my sister's boyfriend. Normally, I don't remember anybody's name growing up, in all the towns I've been, because I've moved that much where I just can't remember anybody's names. But because I wrote that stuff down, I was able to still go back in time and remember exactly the sequence of events that happened. So basically, like I said, it was the AI program that they have on that platform that was able to get me to where I can, build you the sentence structure pretty good. I had to do a lot of changing words and sentences and punctuations and all that stuff. And then after that, once that's done, then I get another person, actually one of my team members on the platform, because I've got a lady that's the main person that assigns these different people to write out my actual story, and then they go through and they'll just double check, make sure everything, that the sentence structure is okay and all that stuff, and that's a little bit of a process. It might take a couple of weeks or whatever, and then so I get back and I'm in communication via email and texting and stuff too, just to see how it's going. And then they also have another team, the artist team that actually does that makes out the cover of the book, and the cover came out exactly the way I described it. I told them exactly what I want to see. I wanted the 3 Sasquatches leading into the town from the hills with the tall grass, and then you can see the lights in the background. So now when you look at my book, it's exactly the way, and they had that done. They must use like a computer or something to do all that, the graphing like that, because there's no way, especially it was done like in 2 or 3 days. It was pretty quick. They sent me back the copy of my email, and I was totally shocked about exactly the way I described it. So, and that's basically it. And then it took a couple months for it to finally, once I got everything, I had to approve everything. I approved the cover, I approved the wording, my the transcript, after it was rewritten or written the way I wanted it, like I had it in my transcript. But yeah, so once it was already everything was approved, it got sent out, and it finally came back in the beginning of January here, and now it's out on Amazon. That's the first place, and you can get it in Barnes and Nobles, and there's, I guess, other places too, but Amazon's the main place that you get it, and it's probably the easiest and the cheapest. And it's only it's only a short story, actually. It's only like 45 pages, and but it's like a coffee table type book, basically. It's not like it's going to be a huge seller or whatever, but I basically wrote this book for my grandkids. I want my grandkids to know who I am, basically, because I don't get to see them that much. But I think they're going to be interested in when they get a little older and stuff. They're kind of young right now, so I gave my copies to my son, who's has my grandkids, and yeah, so that's basically it. I'm just it was actually a pretty easy story to write, because I already had the story in my head and in the journals that I wrote previously. So the process that way, even though it was just my grammar and stuff, it just wasn't that great. So that was the only part I had to work out, and that's what took a little bit longer because I had to make sure it sounded at least halfway decent, you know.
Yeah, I'm glad you're able to get it all written down and edited out with the help of them. And, you know, thinking back to what you experienced that day, and you're looking at the things that are running around you and getting closer. Would you how do you even describe them? Do you describe it more as, was it like they were ape-like creatures or more human, or was it just a weird mixture? Or...
Yeah, see, that's the funny thing too, is it took me a while to try to decipher what I thought about them, you know. And I think I even thought more about it when I'm actually going through the writing process. But when I look back at it, I don't have no sense at all that I definitely didn't look at them. I don't look at them as monsters or anything. I don't think of them as being like I said, like a bear or a creature. I look at them as being more human. They're definitely more humanized than we normally, at least the average person probably even gives them credit for. And even to this day right now, I definitely think that they're so far intelligent, and I think that they even have. I've been watching videos and stuff too, but as far as they do have a communication, I think they do have a verbal communication of some sorts, yeah, they communicate with each other. And at this particular time, when that one was coming towards me, the way I'm looking at it, I did not feel like it was trying to come towards me and do any harm to me, because they weren't making any noise. There was no grunting. There was nothing. I wasn't being aggressive towards them. And I think mainly because they knew that they were in the human territory. So if you think back or think about it, if they come into our territory, they're probably not going to try to make too much of a ruckus or whatever you want to call it. But then that's why you probably hear a lot of their aggression comes when you go into their territory in their homeland. They're trying to scare you away, you know. So I look at that, but at the same time, I felt so sorry for what I did when I'm looking back about it, because when I scared them, it startled them. I don't see them as being afraid of me, because they weren't like totally running like they were like totally afraid of me. They were leaping away from me, but they're also they were looking back at me at the same time as they're leaping. And they weren't like leaping they weren't like running at like a dead full on sprint that I would think that something that would be scared of me would have done. The only thing that startled me the worst is the thing is that just looking at them looking back at me. But now when I'm looking back into that time, I actually feel bad for what I did. You know, I do feel a little bit of a guilt, and I pretty much express that anytime I've been on a Comcast interview. Same thing. They're definitely very intelligent. They live in the basically deep in the forest where man can't even it's almost impossible to even get through, because most people don't realize that there's like 3 million acres of untouched land here in the United States that humans haven't, or at least in our recent history, the humans haven't stepped on, because now that we've got so much luxury around us right now that the average person, they may, you might get the hikers may go maybe 15, 20, maybe 30 miles into a forested area. I mean, that's just a very few people doing that. Just think of the people that live in the cities where they probably never even been in the forest sometimes, you know. But I think that that these creatures are living so far up into the woods that even that humans can't even get to, you know, because people are too lazy now. We were just too lazy. Now, if you look back in the 1700s, those people, they were like men. Those are real men back in 1700s, because they had to actually cross the mountain ranges to get where they had to go. So they didn't have a choice. I mean, of course you have a choice, but if you want to get and discover the rest of America, you have to go through the most rugged terrain possible just to get to where you had to go. And they were true survivalists. They, you get up you go 100 miles into a forested land, you can do anything. And that's my opinion about it.
Oh, and I agree with you. There's, compared to accounts you hear from years ago, and there are people that definitely, don't get me wrong, there are people that definitely still go out to look for Bigfoot, and there are younger researchers, coming up through the ranks, but compared to before, I would say the number is quite less. But Curtis, I would just say thank you so much for coming on the show tonight to share what you experienced that day back in 1983, and we'll definitely have the link to your book on Amazon so people can check that out if they would like. But thank you so much for coming on the show tonight.
Okay, thank you very much for having me. It was my pleasure.
Just want to take a few minutes to say thank you to you, all my listeners, for listening to the podcast. Please take a minute to help out the show by subscribing on YouTube, making sure you hit the bell so you don't miss any notifications, and share the episode on YouTube with a friend. Also, if you're listening to us on a podcast, thank you so much. Make sure that you're subscribed, share the show with a friend. Really, it's all about sharing the show wherever you can. If you've had a Bigfoot encounter related to the following or know someone who has, please reach out to me at bigfootsociety@gmail.com or pass on my email. Here's a list: the Subtle Lake area of Oregon, Rainbow, Oregon, McKinsey Bridge area, Sweet Home, pretty much that entire area, the north part, if you get what I mean. I'll see you back next time, listeners. Sasquatch Summerfest this year, July 11th through the 12th. It's going to be fantastic. July 11th through 12th in Green Waters Park in Oak Ridge, Oregon. And listeners, if you're going to go, you can get a 2-day ticket for the cost of one if you use the code BFS, like Bigfoot Society, but BFS, and it'll get you some off your cost. Priscilla was nice enough to provide that for my listeners. So there you go. I look forward to seeing you there. So make sure you head over to www.sasquatchsummerfest.com and pick up your tickets today.